Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Profiteers versus the People, the podcast where we myth bust the mega wealthy. If you're just now joining us, we highly encourage you to go back and listen to our first episode on Adam Neumann, the founder of WeWork. If you figure, hell, let's just go ahead and listen to this one, let us catch you up to speed.
So up until this point, our boy Adam Neumann has failed his way into reinventing the concept of short-term office leasing, which had already been fairly successfully implemented by the publicly traded company Regus, in spite of the concept's inherent risks and thin margins. And then, due to idiotic valuation methodologies that were little more than pulling a large number from the old chocolate starfish, as well as an arsenal of platitudes like elevate the world's consciousness, it is now 2014 and WeWork is one of the most valuable startups in the world. Despite having literally never turned a profit and being 10% the size of Regus, but worth double what Regus is.
Yes. So it's 2014. WeWork now has 23 offices worldwide.
Yes, because they just opened their first office outside of the United States in London.
Yep, so they're really nailing a technicality there. And they have a $5 billion valuation. Now, some of our listeners at home might be thinking, hey, wait a minute. When we left off, it was 2014, and they had a $1.5 billion valuation, thanks to JP Morgan Chase. And you're absolutely correct. And this is why we love you. When we left off, it was February of 2014, but this was before the annual summer retreat and before a London location. The annual retreat was an annual event that had taken place for each of the previous 2 years, where WeWork members were charged $375 to go to the Adirondacks for 3 days.
Dude, making your employees pay their own way on a company retreat is the scummiest thing on the planet. Like, that feels like a 7th grade field trip.
Dude, I feel like that's just reserved for multi-level marketing things. And those trips are like, they're selling them. Yeah.
Exactly.
Like, I know Cutco does that. What are the other ones? There's the health one I always forget, but it doesn't matter. Herbalife. Oh my God, yes. I feel like that's a huge moneymaker for Herbalife. This could be the only place that WeWork ever turned a profit. But once at these resorts, entrepreneurs determined to make the most out of this networking opportunity had the following to say: I'm getting into as much trouble as possible.
Oh.
My goal was to hook up with a stranger, and I actually hooked up with 2. And then a third quote we found: this is like a mini Burning Man, which can only be yelled in the depths of a K-hole.
From a mouth that has not been brushed in days.
Oh, in days. This was a stinky event for sure. There were seminars and fitness classes, but you can get those at any corporate retreat or really just in most hotels. They have a gym, they have seminars you can go to. Events like this happen all the time. But here, entrepreneurs could smoke weed and drink and have sex with other like-minded entrepreneurs. And this embodies what WeWork is, what makes it different. Sure, when you look at the nuts and bolts, it's exactly like Regus, which is a much larger, much less valuable company. But look at what WeWork provides with this nearly identical concept. They give their members a community or something. If you need a service that you yourself doesn't provide, you can just go down the hall or over to the coffee machine and find someone who does that service.
They were elevating the world's consciousness with drugs.
My consciousness is elevated just reading this stuff. And granted, maybe Regus provides this as well, but the coffee isn't free at every Regus, to my understanding. And WeWork has beer on tap. Or it did. We in the business call that foreboding. So at Regus, you're likely to run into the exact kind of lawyer you need, perhaps, at the coffee machine, sure. But are you going to find that kind of lawyer getting hammered at 11 a.m. in his office? It's a little less likely.
And that is the WeWork difference. Now, ironically, it was Adam Neumann's wife, the Pulcher lady, that ran this, summer camp for bright entrepreneurs.
Because of course it was.
Yeah, right?
This has Paltrow written all over it.
Yeah, this is fucking space camp for Paltrows. But this is an excellent little microcosm of what investors loved about the way that Adam Neumann led his empire, and why, at the end of the year, T. Rowe Price and Goldman Sachs and two others invested yet another $355 million to reach that $5 billion benchmark.
Yeah, what a valuation for a company of such a small size. 2 years later, I'm butchering this name, uh, Kamath Palihapitiya would further epitomize this sentiment, saying, "We need to divorce ourselves from venture capital as an occupation and focus on using capital as a way to take really big bets on things that just seem totally audacious." He further added, "Right now, we haven't done enough of that, and the result is that most of the things we've funded are mostly crap and largely worthless."
I definitely agree with the result. Mostly worthless. And B, if all it takes to create a $5 billion startup is throwing a 3-day rager, I don't think Silicon Valley is ready for me.
It's pretty incredible to me that his sentiment was, most of the stuff we've invested in has turned out to be dumb and not worth any money. So I suggest we go even dumber to pursue something that will somehow make more money. The two are negatively correlated.
We've been thinking way too much about this.
We've been using this as a job almost.
Yeah.
Enough of that.
We've been treating this as an occupation, as something that we add value, but we need to lean into the fact that we just take value away. We are a subtractive enterprise.
Take your money and light it on fire. Speaking of, 2015 is another year of raising and burning absolutely soul-crushing sums of money. In June, Adam raises yet another $434 million, and in July, WeWork partners with Boston Properties and Rudin Management to start their first ground-up project. So they're not just leasing space anymore, they're building it. Additionally, in August, they acquire Case, which is a building information and consultancy firm. The motive here was basically to provide a signature sleek design to all of WeWork's spaces. And according to an article written at the time, it would apparently be the future of office design. A quote from that article reads, "Buildings shouldn't just be a place where you go to do stuff. How can we enable the buildings themselves to be a positive contributor to the activities that happen within them?"
What in the country fried fuck does that mean?
What does that mean?
That is just nonsense.
Yeah.
Like, is that the secret to startups? Just nebulous phrases? Like, also, in our last episode, we discussed the fact that one of the necessities of the short-term leasing model was to cut costs.
You got to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, like your margins are so razor thin and you are so susceptible to a downturn that, to your earlier point, free coffee is just off the fucking table.
Yeah.
So, in this industry, buying a whole company to make your offices extra fancy just might not be the fucking move.
Yeah, especially when you're in startup mode. I mean, I think plenty of startups take pause before hiring someone to help with this.
Exactly. Not buying a whole company.
However, by the end of December, WeWork would have doubled their location count and have 54 offices worldwide, which is still way less than Regus. However, while 54 offices might not be impressive to us, it definitely was impressing some people, because 3 months into 2016, Legend Holdings, based in China, and Honey Capital chose to invest $430 million for the Series F funding round, valuing WeWork at $16 billion.
16 billion. In 2015, they were worth 1.5 billion. And they haven't actually done anything.
They have the same office count at this point. They have 54 offices. Does that mean that each office is supposed to be pulling in however many hundreds of millions of dollars over the next couple of years? Is that what investors are banking on?
Where is the math? Who did the math?
Here's the thing, is Adam Neumann is a moron. But oh my God, he's just getting enabled at every corner here.
Yeah.
There's almost an argument to be made here that he couldn't stop taking investors' money. A month after this, WeWork launched a new concept. We live at 110 Wall Street, which is like apartments, except there's like a shared community area. And you would have your own like smaller living quarters and share a majority of the remaining space with other people, which sounds perilously familiar, but maybe we just don't dive into that right now. Now, most companies would have taken investor capital like this and really pumped it into optimizing the existing idea. Some would say that going straight into a new venture when the first one is so early on would be reckless, but in 2016, perhaps the other foot dropped a little for WeWork. They experienced what could be interpreted by some as sort of a death knell for a startup. They were forced to revise their revenue and growth goals simply because they knew that there was no way they were going to hit them.
And a little context here. So, for many VC firms, things like valuation and funding can all circulate around meeting certain benchmarks that indicate that the company is growing at a rate that justifies its valuation. This, for most companies, would be a huge signal that whatever growth rate they were using to value this company was way too high, which would have multiplicative, if not exponential, impacts on future value of funds put in. But for Adam, the rules just didn't seem to apply because then, in October 12th of 2016, so 3 months later, Shanghai Xinjiang International Hotels puts up an additional $260 million to the Series F funding round, bringing the venture capital to $1.7 billion of that round, and WeWork's valuation to $16.9 billion. So, they proved that they couldn't hit their benchmarks, and their valuation went up.
Granted, perhaps because they weren't able to hit their benchmarks, their valuation went up just a modest $900 million.
Very true.
And this sounds big, but this was the first concerning year in WeWork's run. The company, now standing at 111 offices, had revised their profit forecast by 78%, their revenue forecast by 14%, and reported a 63% expected negative cash flow. By year end, they also had to hit pause on We Live, which someone must have realized was just a reinvented version of just living in a dorm. After this, they stopped talking as much to the press as well. Adam was suddenly camera shy, which was new for the last couple of years. And this forces the question, is this the beginning of the end? Was this the mark where things began to go downhill? It wasn't. Spoiler
No,
alert.
it was.
In fact, plenty of experts thought they weren't growing fast enough. In February of 2017, Adam met with Masayoshi-san of SoftBank. And during a 28-minute encounter, Masayoshi-san told him that Adam reminded him of Jack Ma, the founder of Alibaba and the recipient of SoftBank's first significant investment, one of which made Masayoshi-san truly rich and put him on the map in the first place to begin with. At the end of the conversation, Masayoshi-san drew up the terms for a $4.4 billion investment, just on his iPad in the back of a car, and the two signed. WeWork was now valued at $20 billion and was more valuable than any other office REIT in the United States. According to Patrick Boyle, who has a fantastic YouTube channel that we've used as a source in the past, Masayoshi-san saw a glimmer in Adam's eye, and that told him everything he needed to know. That's why he invested almost $5 billion.
Which, we talked about this in the beginning with that Moneyball example.
Yeah.
How do big investors choose their players, essentially? Yeah. And I think that this is the most on-the-nose example of just incredibly archaic, arrogant decision making.
Just stupidity.
Yeah, like the amount of self-assurance that you'd have to say, I saw a glimmer in someone's eye, and that told me in 28 minutes that I could invest the GDP of a small country in them,
Yeah.
is absurd. And the problem is, this is, according to me, I have no fucking source for this, but when Masayoshi-san invested in Jack Ma, he probably had a similar approach and he probably got lucky. And it's like someone buying the winning lottery ticket and then investing the rest of their winnings in the lottery because obviously they're doing something right. You know?
Couldn't agree more. The fact that we give any deference to these businessmen is absurd. But with this new cash infusion, WeWork kicked into high gear. They opened 90 offices, grew their workforce to 4,000 people, which was more than doubling it, and went on an acquisition spree. In 2017, WeWork bought the Flatiron School, which was a coding boot camp, the Lord & Taylor flagship store at 85 Broad Street, and they partnered with Roan Capital for this, but the two companies bought the building for $850 million. They bought the co-working company Space Mob, which accounted for a good chunk of the $500 million they invested in Southeast Asia. They bought Udemy and Field Lens, planning to use the platforms for marketing. And they bought Meetup for $30 million, which was like a mini LinkedIn, which is a dumbass idea. A mini LinkedIn. And Patrick Boyle made this point too, but it's LinkedIn, but smaller. Why would you want that?
Jesus Christ.
They also gave WeLive another try, launching a new location in Seattle. So dorms for the people in Seattle. They launched Area 51, Paradise Ranch, which was an incubator at their Hudson Square space. And to wrap up the year, they also launched a fitness brand. And in November, citing her dissatisfaction with the education of their 5 kids, Rebecca founded We Grow, which was an elementary school that charged $42,000 for tuition. Basically, what made this school different is that there was more focus on entrepreneurship, and the kids would often be swept up to the Neumann farm in upstate New York to pick crops.
What the fuck?
Yeah. Whatever. But rebounding from a 2016 like the one they had to a 2017 like this had to be an unbelievable feeling. Surely, with that kind of money in hand, turning a profit might just be in reach.
Yeah, because remember, they haven't done that yet.
Yeah, there's no profit to speak of.
None at all. They are burning cash at a rate far faster than they are making. And I think that we could describe WeWork as a blitz-style startup.
For sure.
Another similar idea would be Uber. The idea is to disrupt. And when these startups get a ton of investment, the money is really rolling in, they want to diversify and add different streams of revenue to their sprawling empire. And at this point, the question that we need to ask is, are they doing this because they see new opportunities? Or are they slowly realizing that their core concept just isn't remotely profitable and they're floundering looking for different ways to utilize these economies of scale that they've achieved to come up with some way to make this whole circus turn a profit? And at this point in the story, it's hard to say.
It is hard to say. Yeah. And, another thing that this sort of highlights is the move between natural disruptors and disruptive ideas that kind of have to force it a little. Like,
Yeah.
Amazon existing was a death blow to bookstores the world over. And it wasn't
stores, the whole nine.
Yeah, it wasn't actively trying to destroy bookstores. It was just the new thing. It was a natural disruptor.
It was naturally better. And not that we like Amazon. I am not an Amazon fanboy. Amazon bad.
Amazon bad. Episode coming soon.
Your point holds.
Yes. At DocuSign, people fucking hated signing and driving documents around. It sucked asshole. But
yeah, I do it.
Yeah, the model that WeWork or Uber is seeking to use to force this disruption So far, we have no evidence anywhere to say that this has been successful that I can point to.
And it relies on people changing their habits. Like with Amazon, it didn't require people to do anything really inherently different. People were already ordering from the internet. That wasn't brand spanking new. It just, modernized and made it better. But when using Uber again as an example, when someone was telling the founder of Uber, "Hey, listen, there's just not enough people who need a taxi for this idea to be profitable," the founder of Uber said, "Well, no, I'm not just going after people who use a taxi. I'm going after anyone who has a car.
Yeah.
And therefore, the target market is way bigger."
Yeah.
But to my earlier point, that requires people to stop using cars, which no one is going to do. And WeWork is the same idea. It's, oh, we're going after anyone who works in an office. Well, you're also requiring them to really drastically change the way that they're doing things. We Live is the epitome of that.
Yeah.
It's, people are just going to change the way they've been living for the past 10,000 years because Adam Neumann thinks it's a good idea and therefore there's $1 trillion in this.
Yeah. Which,
no.
But you see, all of this drives home one big theme here. Adam has a vision. With all this new money, 2018 is his year. Henceforth, WeWork's future is three-pronged. The company would maintain its core business of renting out office space, sure. But it would also have ARC, a real estate fund, and would have a real estate services arm, which would do cleaning, security, and the like. Now, according to Adam, these three businesses would allow Adam to control the entire real estate industry, which is not true. And each of these business arms would carry a $1 trillion valuation. He took this idea to Masayoshi-san, telling him that this vision would only require a $70 billion investment. And only. That's it. That's it, Masayoshi-san. And Sun was hooked, writing later that he anticipated WeWork would be worth $10 trillion by 2028, a whopping third of the entire value of the stock market from 2018. But there was a problem with Adam's proposal. $70 billion at that time was basically the entire remaining vision fund that SoftBank held for investing in ideas like this. All of their money would have to go straight to Adam, and at this point, it just couldn't work.
Dude, why does Adam Neumann just sound like such a fucking Austin Powers villain? It's, we're going to create this idea, and it will be worth $1 trillion.
1 billion, fulfillion, Sicilian dollars.
How many knuckles do you think he was deep in his asshole to pull those numbers out?
I can't imagine.
Do you think it was 3 fingers and the thumb, or do you think just 2 fingers and the thumb?
I think he hit elbow, probably.
Do you think that he was scratching his throat?
Oh, yeah.
Because I think that he might have been.
Yeah, his uvula was in reach, for sure. He walked around, by the way, saying stupid shit like this to everyone. And investors ate it hook, line, and sinker, but he pitched other grifters as well. He approached Elon Musk about building a WeWork on Mars, saying that getting there would be the easy part, in fact. Building a community, that's what was really going to take tricks. Nuance. A real methodical approach.
Oh, yes, building a community, something that human beings have been doing for the past 1,000 years.
Since humanity started. Yeah, that's going to be the really tricky part.
Yeah, we are technically cave animals, I think. Community is pretty easy for us.
Yeah, and to this end, Elon Musk is a moron. But we have to give it to him here. He was like, okay, dude, here's the deal. Getting to Mars is the hard part. Like, okay, Adam, getting to Mars is fucking impossible. You idiot. No one can get to Mars.
Elon Musk isn't getting to Mars.
Elon knows he's not getting to Mars. I'm certain of it. Yeah. He also approached Brian Chesky, the CEO of Airbnb, with an ambitious idea. 10,000 apartment units built specifically to rent on Airbnb. Now, commercial real estate listeners among us might know The trick with that, which is 10,000 units, is just not that many units.
Not to Airbnb.
Not to Airbnb, especially. Brian Chesky offered the following critique. 10,000 units, for us, isn't that many units. It's not a terribly ambitious goal. It's probably not worth pursuing there, Adam. So, with this rebuttal, Adam revised his idea. Okay, new plan. How's about 10 million units? Now, this was a bold proposition because they discussed a $100,000 development budget per unit, which means Adam's proposed venture would cost he and Brian Chesky $1 trillion. Trillions don't just grow on trees, Adam.
He just uses illions. Like someone's like, nah, man, 10,000 isn't enough. He's like, oh, well, what about 10 billion units, Brian? What do you think about that?
How's about 1 Sicilian unit?
Jesus Christ.
So 2018 is the year that WeWork introduces Powered by We, which is a service where they come in and build out and manage existing office occupied by clients already, which sounds like it could be a pretty decent business on its own. The big thing that WeWork's big problem here is that they have to go in and get the real estate first. So an idea where they find a person who wants it, who already has the real estate, and just fit it up and manage it is not a half bad idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. On its own, anyways. I mean, as a part of a larger company that's doing all the stupid shit, it's unfortunately too little too late, probably. But they also chose this year to announce a company-wide initiative to curb greenhouse gases by no longer allowing employees to expense meals that include meat. They would also no longer serve meat at company events. Meat be gone. Cow farts and the environment. It's terrible what's happening. They're one of the very first global corporations to introduce a measure like this. And hopefully, with any luck, this will help offset some of the greenhouse gases produced by the $60 million private jet the company bought Adam this very same year.
Dude, this is just fucking peak performative conservation.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, my employees can't eat meat, but I mean, I gotta get places fast. Speaking of, WeWork's spending spree doesn't ease up this year either.
Yep.
In 2018, WeWork made 5 massive acquisitions and somehow pulled another $3 billion from Masayoshi-san.
I can't believe how much money they got out of that dude. That's the real story here.
Yeah, man.
Can you believe that?
No, I cannot believe that. Like, if I could spend 28 minutes with somebody and get $4 million out of them, I would feel so accomplished.
Dude,
that would be
I'd run
1,000th of what Adam pulled out of the sky.
Yeah, I mean, my God, I would disappear. Just disappear. That would be it.
You would never see me again.
Never. God, I hope we're not pitching a business to investors in the future who find out who we are. Oh. In the first half of 2019, WeWork made 5 more giant purchases and got another $3 billion from Masayoshi-san before filing confidentially for an IPO, and then receiving another $600 million from Amazon, Fidelity, and T. Rowe Price. Dude, the list of investors who fell for this shit
is just so high.
It's amazing. June 30th, an interesting observation comes to light. Now, keep in mind, before this, we were doing research and kind of rifling through old archived articles. The vanishingly rare instance of someone saying, this idea is kind of like Regis, just never came about. This was the first real headline-making thing. June 30th of 2019, the observation comes to light. WeWork is on the hook for $47 billion in lease obligations. Pretty similar to the valuation from their last round of investments. They only have customer commitments on $3.4 billion of that space.
Whoopsie.
Whoopsie daisies indeed. A Wall Street Journal piece from this time explained that a big contributor to this difference in obligations and commitment was actually just the time it took to build out the space. Relax, guys. It isn't that startups don't want the space. It's just that a bunch of these spaces aren't ready yet. That's the problem. There's a line around the block. They actually brought up the possibility, by the way, of startups not wanting the space in the coming years, saying it was unclear what would happen in such a scenario.
It's actually pretty clear. You know, weirdly enough,
it's pretty clear. Yeah.
It's like if everyone stopped buying cars, how would Ford do?
Yeah.
It's unclear. It can't be known. We have no way of seeing over that horizon.
Such a concept eclipses the human mind. We will never understand.
Here's the thing. And it really comes out in reading between the lines of the articles that were coming out around this time. Everyone was getting the facts kind of right. It was there.
Yeah.
But there was so much groupthink.
Yeah.
And so much preemptive interpretation that the mental gymnastics that everybody was willing to do to justify these absolutely blatant indicators was fascinating.
It's riveting when someone says something like that can't happen, because if it did, the ramifications would be unfathomable. Yes. That thing is going to happen. Like, for sure.
Yes. And if enough people who have enough sway in a room think something, they're right.
Yeah. Straight up.
At the time, they're right. It doesn't matter what the facts say. I think that there are a ton of parallels to SBF, a ton of parallels to just other grifters who everyone was in for the short game, and they were like, well, if everybody else is right, then I want to be right too.
Yeah.
This is what happens.
This is it.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. The article points to the fact that the idea is pretty easy to replicate. If you look, Knotel just hit $1 billion valuation, which is a company similar to WeWork with obviously fewer locations.
And just a cooler name.
Way cooler name.
Knotel. Sick.
It's tight, right? Blackstone also bought The Office Group in 2017 for $640 million. See, ideas like this have legs. We're going to glaze over the fact that The Office Group merged with another one after these companies started
dropping like flies.
Yeah, dropping like flies is the right phrase. And Knotel is gone already. Knotel went bankrupt before WeWork did. Yeah. So, August 14th, 2019, WeWork goes public with its S1.
And this is fucking huge.
This is huge. And it doesn't look good. Some investors hold steady. Others, meanwhile, begin reevaluating Adam's management style. Adam got super into surfing, but didn't like paddling out, so he hired people to tow him by jet ski, and paid extra if these people towing him had to skirt some laws to tow him out to the waves. Maybe this isn't Adam going the extra mile to get exactly what he wants and needs. Maybe it's just him being a lazy asshole. Maybe asking executives who want a face-to-face meeting to fly across the country with you and then ignoring them for the whole flight isn't making use of a tight schedule. Maybe it's just inconsiderate. And bear in mind, this isn't Adam getting swept up in other responsibilities. Often, it was him and a few friends spitting tequila at each other and covering the inside of the plane in vomit. Also, this isn't the whole story. Plenty of times, Adam would instruct those executives to meet him at the airport on a moment's notice and then keep them waiting there for hours. Sometimes he'd leave without them. Sometimes he wouldn't show up at all. And sometimes they would fly together and then he would insist that they find their own way home when they reached their destination. Can you imagine all of these things happening to you at once?
No, I fucking can't. Like,
fun, party, work culture is nice, but imagine being like, I have to talk to you. It's dire. It's about these S1s. And your boss being like, no problem, bro. Meet me at the airport in 5 minutes. And you go, 5 minutes?
We're in New York City. I'm on the other side of fucking town.
So you break a bunch of traffic laws and you get there and then you wait for 6 hours. And he shows up this time. He didn't leave you. And you get up in the plane and then him and his buddies puke everywhere. And then you never get to talk about what you needed to talk about. And then you land in Sacramento and he tells you to find your way home.
Never in this podcast would we ever advocate for violence. But the fact that none occurred, just from a hindsight's 2020 perspective, is fascinating.
To this regard, Adam is lucky to be alive. Truly. Also, Adam would do this with cars, too. He had a Maybach that he would ride around in, and when a conversation with an executive would conclude in the car, he would ask them to exit the car and go to the car following his car. He would notoriously do this, like, in the middle of gridlock traffic, when the chase car was nowhere in sight, and he'd be like, I don't care, find it, and then he'd close the fucking door.
In the story, Adam didn't kick you out at the airport. He was like, oh, yeah, man, I'll give you a ride. And then in the middle of LA traffic at 5:30, he kicks you out of the car to the side of the highway. It is 98 degrees in the middle of July, and you're like, I might die out here.
You're on the side of the Pacific Coast Highway.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So investors are now beginning to worry they misread a few things. Maybe the guy who licks his plate clean during meetings isn't just extremely frugal. That would probably be a big strike against a show dog, actually. Maybe the guy saying, we're going to alter the world's consciousness doesn't have big ideas rattling around in his head. Maybe it's just full of hot air. Also, is this even a tech company? At the outset, the CTO of WeWork was a 16-year-old high school dropout getting paid minimum wage.
So this is really, for us at least, and I don't think it was really quite coming into the conversation yet.
Yeah.
But this was the question that keeps coming up with folks like Adam Neumann. Are they quirky geniuses who have this malevolent intention where they're playing 4D chess to put money from one person's pocket to theirs? And I would say, looking at all of this, Adam Neumann is definitely not a genius.
Yeah.
He's definitely not playing 4D chess with anyone. He might be one of those people who won the lottery and then played again and somehow won the lottery again.
Yeah.
Because most of his sneaky little moves are getting caught right there in this public S1 IPO filing.
That's it. The S1 clued people into the fact that Adam Neumann sold the We trademark, which he very stupidly bought for millions, back to the company for $6 million. Word got out from the S1 that he owned several of the buildings that WeWork occupied and was profiting handsomely on these leases. And to start that second arm of his three-armed strategy, the one where he's got the ARK investment fund, he sold $700 million in company stock and established it as a family office.
Yikes. But, so, okay. I think that this tells us something as well. And that is, like I said earlier, I don't think that Adam is going to be joining Mensa anytime soon. But I do think that the findings in the S1 make it pretty obvious that there is a fair amount of intentional dishonesty in his business model.
For sure.
His practices weren't those of someone who just oopsie-daisied billions of dollars away. He was very intentionally diverting funds away from WeWork to himself.
Yes.
And while that might not be considered illegal fraud by some lawyer who knows more than me, it still feels very Grant Cardone. And it indicates that Adam, on some level, knew that his whole empire was poop from a butt.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
It also calls into question, is he just so much of a narcissist that he didn't think that he would be caught because he keeps not getting caught with all of his outlandish ideas. Like, if I got $4 billion out of a 30-minute conversation, I might think that I could cook the S1 filing. But I don't know. That's very speculative. Only thing that I can say here is there's definite evidence of intentional malevolence and just fucking stupidity. Like, so much stupidity.
So much. I mean, a 30-minute, $4 billion meeting is incredible. Don't get me wrong.
And it only happens if both people are dumb.
Yeah.
Like, that happens. I don't think a smart person can get $4 billion out of a dumb person in 30 minutes. I think they both just have to be very stupid.
So, in light of all the negative press and a lot of people coming to their senses, WeWork decides to postpone this IPO in September, mid-September, saying the We company is looking forward to our upcoming IPO, which we expect to be completed by the end of the year.
Big things coming.
Big things coming. And it's reported that the company might just seek a $10 billion valuation, which would really upset me if I put a lot of money into this shit sandwich on the outside.
To be clear, that is less money than has gone into WeWork as of yet.
Yeah, it's funny to me that they were like, don't worry, guys. We're going to take all these problems and we're going to address all of them. And then they go in and just make things so much worse.
So much worse.
Don't worry, guys. I mean, yeah, sure, the investment, we're thinking it'll probably drop in value by about 75%, but we're getting on it. More hands are going to go up from that comment. A week later, they announced that they're selling the private jet, which towards the end of Adam's run as president was really pissing a lot of people off just because a bunch of people were denied raises and bonuses in the light of all this turbulence, plain reference. And here's the CEO of the company flying around in a cloud of weed smoke with vomit all over his shoes. Fine, I'm quitting. Adam would wind up saying the same fucking day, basically. And that's not an actual quote, but he just stepped down as CEO and relegated himself to the much lesser role of non-executive chairman of the board, which would typically imply some distance from the company, which there is none of.
And it would also imply that there is doubt from within.
Mm-hmm.
That the people that he has surrounded himself with are looking and saying, oh shit, he might be the problem.
Maybe we were wrong about all that stupid bullshit he did.
Yeah, maybe he wasn't just a fun, quirky guy. Maybe he's a monster. We need to get him out.
Yeah, for sure. A few days later, WeWork announces they're selling Conductor, managed by Q, and that stupid micro LinkedIn company Meetup.
Micro LinkedIn? Hilarious.
And they're looking at cutting 2,000 to 3,000 employees to reduce costs as well. Rebecca Neumann steps down as CEO of WeGrow, that stupid school thing they were doing, and announced she would also no longer be a part of the We company as a whole.
Aww.
Oh, poor Rebecca. The following month, things didn't get any easier. Members began complaining of eye irritation and a strong odor coming from some phone booths throughout the portfolio, and WeWork looked and warned that as many as 2,300 of those phone booths throughout the US and Canada were tainted with formaldehyde, whoopsie daisy, and will be decommissioned. Later this same month, Medina Barty, the former chief of staff for Adam Neumann, sued the We company over various allegations, including a gender pay gap, marijuana use by company executives, and pregnancy discrimination.
Whoopsie.
Allegedly, male hires were being offered $400,000 plus a $175,000 signing bonus, whereas Medina Barty was getting paid $150,000 for the exact same role. In fact, during her time at WeWork, Medina also mentioned that Neumann asked about her plans to get married and pregnant during the interview.
Oh!
Big no-no.
Yeah, you can't do that.
Can't do that, Adam. She did her best to keep the eventual pregnancy to herself, but Adam smoked her out, literally. She was forced to tell him that she was pregnant as an explanation for why she could no longer accompany him on his private jet, which he had a pension, which we previously mentioned, for hotboxing. So, she took leave. But when she returned, she found that she'd been replaced by a male employee who was making $400,000 with a $175,000 signing bonus. See, this is how she determined that someone was getting paid twice what she was for the very same job. It was her job.
More than twice. More
Yeah,
than twice.
way more than 3 times, in fact, if you count the signing bonus.
Christ. Jesus Christ.
Eventually, she was able to reclaim the chief of staff role she left behind, though, as far as we can tell, no substantial pay raise was awarded to make up the difference between what she was making and this other male employee who temporarily replaced her. But she had the position back. So, good move, right direction. She had another baby, figured it was going to be fine this time around, but the shit happened again. And this time, Neumann was a big old fucking sourpuss about it. After the failed IPO, the two were driving back from JP Morgan Chase, and Adam commented, "I hope you enjoyed your vacation." Like, do you think I'm happy about this? Having a kid? Who in their right mind has a baby to avoid getting stoned as hell on a private jet? Who would do that? Yeah. And as it turned out,
Not
though,
me.
not me. As it turns out, women did have cause for wanting to skip the parties, though. A woman who was promoted to the culture team, who was attempting to address the gender wage gap we just discussed, was groped at one of the summer retreats. To justify his actions, the perpetrator explained that he was blackout drunk. Man, I was so shit faced. At the time of our sources publishing, the perpetrator was still employed with the company.
Fucking shit.
Yeah,
Dude.
that same woman was walking off stage at WeWork's annual summit event a few months later, and a different employee grabbed her and forcibly tongue kissed her until she slapped him. Curiously, he had no recollection of this happening either. Now, despite getting accolades, raises, and promotions, within the year she began getting boxed out of projects and was ultimately fired. The company denied these allegations and the allegations of a gender pay gap quite passionately, but in 2021 they released a report for their UK operations showing that their mean gender pay gap stood at 30%, and the bonus pay gap was at 70%.
Fucking hell.
For those wondering if this mirrors pay gap severity elsewhere in the UK, in 2019, the pay gap for the UK at large for full-time workers was 9%. And in 2020 and 2021, the gender pay gap in the UK was 7 and 7.7%, respectively. So no, despite their ardent defense, this is a pretty bad look.
Very much so.
Yep. Speaking of enjoying your vacation, as employees wait to see whether or not they still have a job, it's announced on the 22nd that SoftBank is buying $3 billion of investor stock. And close to $1.2 billion of this would be going straight to Adam, the chief architect of this poop from a butt. Hope you enjoy your vacation, shithead. Beyond the effect this had on employee sentiment, 2,400 layoffs were right around the corner. It was a pretty unbelievable slap in the face for Masayoshi-san. The next month, SoftBank would report a $9.2 billion write-down on its WeWork investment and take control of at least 70% of the company's equity. And in the midst of this fallout, they were going to have to pay Adam a 10-digit sum.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Unsurprisingly, in March of the following year, this is 2020 now, SoftBank announced that it would be telling Adam to go fuck himself. They were pulling out of the $3 billion stock purchase. Adam, who's looking forward to collecting for his performance, would now be getting nothing. Adam and WeWork had no intention of letting this stand, and their next move was suing SoftBank for performance on its commitments. And eventually the two sides reached a settlement. You see, WeWork was going public via a special purpose acquisition company, which would prove to be a disaster anyways. This was a trend that came, shat all over everything, and withered into nothing almost immediately.
Yep.
To move forward with this SPAC, as these are known, SoftBank agreed to buy about half of Adam Neumann's $1 billion position for $480 million. Pay him an additional $185 million for a non-compete, and on top of that, $106 million in settlement dollars. That balloons Adam's golden parachute to about $770 million.
Jesus fucking Christ.
After shedding 99% of its value, WeWork filed for bankruptcy on November 6, 2023. So everyone involved except for Adam lost their ass. But Adam knows that although he made a fortune through this bungled endeavor, he lost the one thing worth more than money: his reputation.
I think that my reputation is not worth $770 million.
Yeah, the money is better. Like, let's be real.
Yeah, like if anyone is buying a reputation, my price is lower than $770 million.
Mine too, for sure. Way lower.
I mean, bips,
Pennies
like
on the
fucking
dollar.
points.
And not only that, you don't need a reputation to get venture capitalist dollars, apparently. Adam's new venture Flow just landed a $350 million investment from Andreessen Horowitz. Adam describes the company as a tech-forward real estate venture, and the website is packed to the gills with fancy venture capital bait words. But a Medium article written by Matthew Huser, Matthew, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, epitomizes the concept beautifully in 71 words. The article is linked in our sources, and we urge you to check it out. The summary is as follows. When you rent an apartment, you're throwing your money away. Flow appears to be a vehicle where a portion of your rent will go into investing in the company that is renting out apartments. Due to branding, this might allow them to charge a little more for the apartment. The company gets cash flow, the renters build equity like a house, and might stay a little longer. That's it. That's Flow. 71 words right there. Nothing about the core of this concept is tech forward. This is an old, boring real estate play that currently has 3,000 apartment units. And thanks to the good old schmucks at Andreessen Horowitz, an unbelievable $1 billion valuation. So, we're looking back on all of this. Time for some questions. I'm going to pose them to you this time, Money. Who does this reflect more poorly on? Investors or Adam Neumann?
That is an excellent question. And you know what? I might say something that isn't fun for our podcast. I honestly think it's worse for the investors.
For sure.
Here's the fact of the matter. I hear bad ideas all the time.
Yeah.
And the whole concept of venture capital and, I mean, maybe on a larger scale, massive wealth inequality is you are trusting smaller groups of people to be more informed and smarter than the average person. Yeah. So you give them more resources to make those resources flow more freely. When you allow wealth to pool like that, and you allow people to throw it away at such horrible ideas, then that's a big indictment of the idea as a whole. So I think that it is more an indictment of the venture capital ecosystem, but we cannot gloss over the fact that Adam Neumann lied a lot. Like, he knew what he was doing when he did it. So no one's a good guy, but I think the investors were the gasoline on the very small flame that was Adam Neumann and created a fucking forest fire.
Absolutely. The idea that we should give any sort of deference to these people is absurd. But with that, it's Crutch's time. Consumer harm, this is weird, but I don't know that we have any consumer harm here at all. An argument could be made that the formaldehyde-tainted phone booths made some people uncomfortable, but they announced it and took the necessary action. They're idiots, but for 8 years, clients got to bask in Adam's dipshit money fountain. And there's nothing wrong with that. Rich parents, no story that doesn't include identity theft can have this level of stupidity and money without rich parents.
So many ologists.
So many ologists. And where the Neumann-ologists fell short, his wife's Paltrow money surely bridged the gap. Union suppression and employee abuse, I'm going to level with you.
I didn't read this earlier.
I don't, me personally, I don't really give a shit as much about the big investors that got shafted here. But a big chunk of the staff got absolutely wrecked by this shit. Adam got away, and his employees just got creamed. The stock that they held went to zero. Yep. People lost bonuses, jobs. They were skipped for promotions. Just big bummer all around. Yeah. Tax avoidance and taxpayer dependence, no bailouts, the company's gone. I don't think Adam's smart enough to evade the good folks at the IRS, though time will tell.
Yeah, they definitely didn't get too big to fail.
Definitely not.
They just failed, actually.
They just got moderately big and then just shat the bed. Child labor allegations is a miss. He's just not rich enough for it. Harassment allegations. Adam enabled a culture of relentless harassment, and for not intervening, we're going to give him the H. Egregious behavior after hours. We couldn't find any. And slap suits.
Okay. Like, does being an asshole count? Because Adam Neumann is an asshole.
He's a chode.
Like, all of the fucking just super self-important, kick you out of the Maybach on the side of the highway. That is,
you know what? You're
douchey.
Right. He gets the E for sure.
Douchey.
He gets the E.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess that technically wasn't after hours.
But it kind of is. I mean, half the time he was drinking or whatever else. It's all a blur. He didn't work a lot, so
yeah,
we can say it was after hours. I'll give that to you for sure. He gets the E.
Yeah.
For slap suits, it was not hard to find shit on Adam Neumann. He has not paid any press people any money to not air anything.
No, just all the press people. We found this with SBF. It was so funny reading the transition of journalists who had no idea what the fuck they were talking about and were just parroting what other journalists said. And how it was like, this guy is doing X, Y, and Z, and he's a genius. And then this guy is still doing X, Y, and Z. It's horrible, and he's a moron.
We can't believe that he's this stupid.
So yeah, I agree. No slap suits, just,
all the other shit. Yeah. Well, guys, thank you so much for tuning in on our series on Adam Neumann. We love you all, and thank you so much for listening again. Definitely check out our subreddit. Tell us how we're doing. Let us know if you have ideas for other episodes. Feel free to drop us a line. Our email is in the description box there. Money Mike, do you have anything to plug?
I don't. I think that we're ready to say
goodbye.